we're going to move right ahead to our next speaker. I'm delighted to introduce Rob Griffin, who is a professor of radiation and cancer biology and has worked with a lot of companies, including a favorite of mine, Rejuvenix, which had part of its origin stories in my class. And it's a long road, and I hope you're going to talk a little bit about it on the long way to telling us about non-dilutive funding, which I want to say is the good kind of funding, but it's all good if you choose the right partners. Anyway, please join me in welcoming Rob.
Thank you very much. And wow, I learned a lot in that talk as well. Now I know more about Kevin than I ever knew before. And I'm not from anywhere called Egypt. Oh, but I do need to open my talk, I guess. So yeah, so to switch to a little more practicality, tangible ideas, especially us at an academic medical center, thinking about innovations, thinking about transferring entrepreneurial ideas into something functional that we can still retain, what we do as faculty and staff, and yet potentially fulfill the mission of the university, and also potentially help patients and the greater good. I was asked just to go over what we talk about a lot in these situations and at BioVentures with startup companies and people trying to patent their ideas, which is how to get non-dilutive funding, which basically means federal funding, which there's a whole bunch of programs that I can't even keep up with on a daily basis. They're changing so rapidly, but we're going to go through the basics of those today. And just a little bit of background on me. I should have put some slides up on where I'm from and what I do, but that's not today. I'm not used to this. So I'm a professor of radiation oncology, first and foremost. I'm a radiation biologist. And for about 30 years, I've been working on various experimental therapeutics, trying to use them to sensitize tumors to radiation therapy or to chemotherapy, or to deliver drugs more efficiently, mostly to cancer, some neural differentiation work as well. And so about 2018 or 19, I got involved with Rejuvenix, as Sarah mentioned, a small startup here that went through the commercialization program at Fayetteville. Jay Gandy is a consultant of that group. Amanda Stolars, who's assistant professor here in pharmaceutical sciences, was the chief science officer. And then we also had a CEO that was an MBA, Joshua Phillips. And they contacted me because I'd done a lot of radiation enhancement and experimental therapeutics work, and they needed a biologist to push forward they had licensed a patent from the university, which was a radiation inducible drug release system. So I got very interested in that from all of my previous research and experience. And we ended up getting a phase 1 SBIR, non-dilutive funding from the National Cancer Institute, to support that idea a couple of years back now. And we're waiting patiently for our phase 2 SBIR, which is a much bigger award, because the phase 1 went pretty well, even through the pandemic and all the other things. But that's kind of how I got into this most recently in the small business realm and at BioVentures. And during that award, I had to take a leave from UAMS to become the scientific PI at the company. Because as I'll show you, a lot of funding is requiring a significant effort at the company level, and you can't be a full-time faculty member and be the PI at the company. Well, that was a journey that I would not like to repeat. And it's something that, because of all of the things that go on at the academic level, trying to get a leave, all the benefits have to change. It was a huge pain in the butt. So I think Kevin said, wow, you really went through a lot. You should help others with this and avoid that. So maybe you should join us at BioVentures and start to help faculty and new IP be developed in a more efficient and more effective way. So that's just a little piece of what I've been doing, and why I think I could at least talk a little bit intelligently about how to go about this and what the benefits and the disadvantages could be of these pathways. So I just want to talk today briefly about, background of these types of funding, how you could, once you have a disclosed idea or a provisionally patented idea, or you come across a company that has a patent that contacts you as a scientist and wants you to get involved, what are the options to look for funding that can push you down that road to de-risk your invention, as was mentioned before, to the point that a company is not going to have to make a decision about billions and billions of dollars, but maybe just millions of dollars to take that then to a bigger pharma or similar healthcare type of situation, and move it forward. So these are just some things that, the major thing, I think for all of us today, the major thing we want all of you to do is know we are here and we're a new team. And we're actually, very excited to kind of be a conduit now for IP at UAMS and also the region and the state in a much more effective way than maybe it has been done before. So help is plentiful. I'm going to talk a little bit just about how, the different systems we have in place to help you if you have the chance to want to pursue small business funding through the federal government or other similar sources. And then I want to spend the last part. So what becomes interesting once you start talking about this, as I mentioned, it was difficult for me to do a leave in order to be the PI on this grant. And what becomes very apparent is that there's the whole, there's a bit of a gap, right, of knowledge and understanding between the academic process and the small business development process. And what happens is promotion and tenure gets slammed right in the middle of that, because there's a lot of great new faculty that maybe don't have tenure or are looking for promotion that want to do to develop their ideas. But what happens is in the P&T documents, there's no language saying that's valued. So it's a huge wall. And that's, since I started in July, that's really what we've run into. So I'd like to talk a little bit about some efforts on the national stage that have been done and really are a very solid argument of how we should incorporate this at places like UAMS and other universities. And that's kind of what we hope to do in the very near future to allow all of you to be more effective in this space. So SBIR, STTR, just to get the basics. I know we're at a lot of different levels here as far as, maybe some of you have never heard of it. Many of you probably applied for these. It's a big program. It's, many billions, several $1 billion a year in federal dollars go to these programs. The SBIR, just so you know, it's Small Business Innovation Research. And that's one that's more focused on the company doing a little more work. But it also requires the PI to be on that company side at over 50% effort. And then the small business technology transfer agreements, those are more of a cooperative agreement, but there still has to be a company leading the effort. But faculty can be more easily incorporated because you don't have to put as much of an emphasis on the PI on the company side. It began way back in 1982. Which was likely because of that Bayh-Dole Act that came out, I believe, in 1980. And that allowed university faculty and others to commercialize their ideas. Prior to that, I think it was a little bit of a vague area. It was considered that university owned all of the IP, and there wasn't the ability for a faculty member to actually take that and commercialize it under those sorts of agreements. And so in 82, and it's been reauthorized continually since, there's a percentage of the budgets that are aside for small business innovation research grants and another smaller percentage for STTR grants. However, these are just the 5 largest agencies get that 0.45%. So technically there may be similar money in both because the budgets of each agency vary greatly. There's been over 30 billion, probably much more than that by now in SBIR awards. And it's overseen by the Small Business Administration. This is the act I was saying about that kind of opened the floodgates to allow this sort of activity and support from the government to kind of co-develop things to get them out to the market and to help the community and the country and hopefully the world. The basic goals, of course, we want, this country has always wanted to be innovative. It's interesting that, and to help small businesses grow, to have a vital economy. It's interesting in recent years now, with many of you may have heard of the CHIPS Act and other things like that have come through. There's a really big emphasis on the United States becoming more technologically innovative and getting back to that lead on the stage, as many of you have probably sensed. And the CHIPS Act is a great example of that. That's funding major initiatives now at the NSF and other agencies to not only fund individual small business grants, but also fund large scale programs to help support or even give out money to small businesses in communities or in regions. There's one right now that we're involved with called the NSF Innovation Engine. There's a lot of names. I'm trying not to use acronyms because that's like, And the Arkansas Economic Development Commission actually put a small phase 1 grant of that in, and UAMS and BioVentures is involved in that, and we've gotten back the just-in-time request. So it looks like that's going to be funded. That leads on, that's a couple $1 million, but that leads on to a potential 10-year, $150 million grant to support ecosystem development, all surrounding innovation, technology, entrepreneurship, and commercialization. So there are a lot of programs exploding right now. And I'm really only talking about these basic individual startup grant type of startup company mechanisms. But just so you know, I think the time is ripe for many reasons. It doesn't fund a traditionally very basic science, right? The true academic basic science that you don't have a necessarily commercialization or intellectual property angle on, which makes sense. Non-disruptive technologies, that's not really what, so all these things go through study sections, first of all. And study sections are filled with academics and some commercialization expert type people, but they want things that they can see have the chance to change the market and disrupt current technologies. And then full-scale manufacturing, things like that on things that are already potentially patented. So with that, I just wanted to show you this quick 5-minute video because a major supporter, and many of you may or may not know about this, in the state of these types of activities is the Arkansas Small Business Technology Development Center that our Rebecca Todd, who you're going to hear from in a little bit, worked there for a number of years, but they, support efforts all over the state. And 2 of the companies in this video, hopefully I can get it to work. Let's see what happens, are ones that are much more biomedically involved. One of them is Rejuvenex, the company I was lucky enough to get involved with, but let's just watch this and we'll continue if it will work.
The valley of death that everyone talks about, it really is a valley of death. You have all these research technologies that never get out of the lab. Really, a big part of it is there is no middle ground for funding to get it far enough along so that you actually have a product.
There's significant hurdles to get over in the front end just to complete the research and development. Rejuvenex was formed to help bring better treatment to cancer patients who are having to interrupt their treatments or stop their treatments altogether due to the debilitating side effects of chemotherapy. SBIRs and STTRs are one of the major funding mechanisms that help catapult these new ideas and new technologies that are developed forward. By going through the STTR and SBIR process, we're able to achieve a milestone that we wouldn't have been able to achieve alone. And once we started moving forward with our idea and determined that we did want to take it and commercialize it, we reached out to ASB TDC, who helped us develop our SBIR applications as well as the STTR applications.
We are basically trying to reinvent water treatment. The old processes for wastewater treatment and dealing with contaminants are very old. We want to come up with new innovative technologies that can address the new contaminants that we're starting to see in our water that are harder to treat.
From the very beginning, when Shelby and I were starting the company, I learned very quickly that there's no way we could pitch to, say, a set of investors for money. We have nothing to sell yet. So SBIR and STTR really fills that gap.
It's essentially free money. It's non-dilutive, and we get to test out ideas and get it to hopefully a prototype stage before we go looking for more investment.
SBIR is awarded by government organizations, including USDA, the NSF, and a few others. It's a lot of funding to create innovative products within our country. The very first time that I applied to USDA SBIR, I won. The problem I was trying to address is with small scale hydroponic farmers. I'm working to increase their production capacity with minimal investment. But I wouldn't have received that award if it wasn't for the Arkansas Small Business and Technology Development Center. I had never written a grant before. The center helped me understand all of the hoops that you have to jump through to win an SBIR.
In 2018, we founded AMBOSS out of a technology we're developing called swarm 3D printing. The idea is to use a swarm of mobile robots to work together to do autonomous manufacturing.
Going into the grant, the biggest thing was the funding. You have to have funding to make your project work and to take an idea into a business. But then after going through it, you learn that it's not really just the funding. It's the market research that you get to do during the SBIR program.
SBTDC has been instrumental in our entrepreneurial journey and navigating through this complicated SBIR application process.
Most of my recent work is aligned around tissue regeneration. Under the funding from the Department of Defense, we have worked on developing solutions for bone regeneration for problems that currently do not really have real solutions. So as you probably imagine, as a researcher, as a scientist, as a professor, I do not really know too much about business. So this is where ASBTDC comes into place. And basically, they do pretty much all the things that I don't know how to do. They help with the SBIR process. They advise on how to submit an SBIR proposal. They even advise you on how to form a company. So it can go from very basic to very complex. So that's what makes them absolutely needed for people such as myself.
The help and services provided by the ASB TDC has been incredible for us. Everything from those market research booklets that we get to be able to write our commercialization plan and to be able to write the market competition aspect of the proposal. We would not be able to do that without that kind of help.
One of the great things our company found as we began working with ASB TDC was that you don't have to be in Little Rock. It's Arkansas small business. It's Arkansas economic development. These resources are available to you wherever you are. Ran into a member of the chamber in our local community of Perryville and was able to put him in touch with the ASB TDC to get assistance with some ideas that he's been working on.
I just had an idea. I had this problem and this desire to solve a problem for hydroponic farmers, but that's all I had. I didn't have business experience. And so when I reached out to the Arkansas Small Business Technology Development Center, they really held my hand through this process, and it really helped me win.
So this is not a commercial for ASB TDC, but it is a commercial for ASB TDC because show of hands of anybody here who had heard of that organization before today. Yeah, maybe only about half. It's interesting. So, I mean, we found that there's a lot of these organizations, not only that one, I'll tell you about another one too, Science Venture Studio. There's a bunch of organizations in the state that can be very helpful, but we need to do a better job, as BioVentures team, also connecting to you all to those teams. And we don't need to reinvent the wheel, right? They have a lot of supported programming and knowledge on how to start a business, how to, do whatever you need to do to get these things off the ground. And so it's been really, it's kind of fun to connect the dots and see that we've really got a strong network ecosystem here that can support a lot of different, very interesting new technology that deserves a chance to be developed. And so my side note is that, how much time do I have? I'm fine. So there was that one video in there, that was my team in Rejuvenex lab, actually in the BioVentures incubator here, but she was holding up a tube, and the gentleman that was talking about, he was looking at it. That was Joshua, our CEO, and they were studying some salt dissolved in water in a tube. I always get a kick out of how they have to hold of a fake tube. And we actually make liposomes with chemotherapy in them and have to give radiation. So, it's hard to show that in a quick slide, but I just crack up every time I see that. Oh, anyways, so he proved salt dissolves in water. So that's good. So there's a lot of agencies, as I mentioned. I mean, this program is huge. I mean, I can't, and when you get on email lists with all of the different programs from all of these different agencies, USDA, DOD, DOE, the NIH is a major player, and the National Science Foundation, they all have programming, they all have support and resources. So, I mean, I'll leave it to you. You can easily find these things on the web. And I think at BioVentures, we can be a conduit of helping you kind of strain out what is maybe more important or less important as you get going towards potentially having funding applications. Interesting, my Rejuvenex award was, oh, this doesn't work, does it? It was a SBIR contract, which is actually not a grant. It was in response to every year the NIH and NCI publish a list of topics that they're interested in funding. So it's more directed. And so there's like 30 of them in the NCI, you know, major questions in cancer therapy and diagnosis. One of them was therapeutics controlled by radiation therapy. And so luckily Rejuvenex had this liposome that was triggered to release their drug when they were irradiated. So it was a perfect fit. And we ended up getting that award. So we're hoping that that's, you know, was the beginning of a lucky that we actually were scanning the web pages to see that was the first luck. And then the fact that we had a technology to fit that was the second victory. But just so you know, it's not all NIH. It's definitely not all NIH. There's a lot of NSF and many other agencies that do a lot of biomedical work as well. I can't get on here. There we go. So STTR as well has, there's the 5 largest agencies have an STTR program. That's where you can be the PI, but still retain your faculty role completely at the academic institution, as long as you have a company involved with you that's willing to license and or develop the technology and the IP. And these are the agencies that have that program. As I mentioned, what's nice is that the small business still has to perform about 40% or more of the work. But the research institution partner can have a major share as well. And you don't have to, as a PI, maybe you're the inventor of the technology, you can still be on the academic side and still do a lot of work, but not have to completely change your appointment and strategies. So it's definitely worth considering. Exception to that is the NSF, they don't do this in the STTR program. So, and how it works is this, you know, the phase 1 is really meant to be proof of concept. It's very limited. It's 6 months to a year typically. It's not a lot of money. It's $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 to do a lot of things to prove that your technology has a chance. And that's kind of what we did in our liposomal approach. We proved that we could make it and we could deliver it and it could release drug and have some effect. And we had a paper published. And so that's the basis of our phase 2 application. In the contract world, they actually invite you, after they look at your progress report, they invite you to submit a phase 2, which is a couple $2 million. And that's much more focused on prototype development, testing in wider, larger animal models, other strains, et cetera, leading towards eventually a first clinical phase 0 or phase 1 type of study. As I mentioned, it's limited money in these phase 1s. It's meant to give, you know, good technology ideas a chance to prove that there's something there. Phase 2 gets a lot more interesting and probably a lot more busy. We proposed a lot of things to do in 2 years in this phase 2. So I'm excited if it gets funded, but it's going to be a lot. And then, you know, there are supplemental aspects too. You can get different supplements for extra funding along the way. Some agencies also do a phase 1 and 2 combined, depending on the level and where your technology is along the path. Some more advanced technologies are ready to do a lot of things at once. So that can be done. Traditionally, there's been a decent funding rate. 15 to 30% seems like it's within a big standard error bar. But I think overall, there's much better chance if you can get to the point of you got your setup with a company and your technology and a partnership, there's a good chance you can get some funding to start this journey. And again, as we've mentioned in the morning, allowing the federal government to give you money instead of an investor who's going to want a share of the end profits of this is really important, because it gets the more you do that, the less you've got the ability you have to leverage things down the path. And then phase 2, if you, like I said, if you've actually proven in your proof of concept that it works, there's even a greater chance of funding. So not trying to jinx ourselves, we're hoping we've got a good chance for our phase 2. So, you know, I think a lot of this has been covered, but, you know, the process, right? If you have an idea, disclose. We got to go back to Eric's talk and how to do that, right? That's the number one thing. Talk to us, like John said. It's all about contacting BioVentures early. You know, we don't care if it's way too early, we'll tell you that, right? Or if it's way too late, we'll tell you that too probably, but at least you'll know. And then if it's worth it, you go through the effort of disclosing, defending to the patent and copyright committee, having them deliberate, decide what they want to do. Hopefully you're going to generate some more data along that path and work towards the decision for UAMS to submit a provisional, which you have that year of protection then. where you can actually do more work, hopefully, and potentially get some seed funding from us or other mechanisms. And then at the stage of actually doing the SBIR, you either have to decide to start your own company, like we've talked about, or find a company interested, or maybe a company that's already licensed the patent from the university or another organization. And then, you know, ASP, TDC, and others are very instrumental at that point to help you establish all the things you need to do to put these proposals together. And the PI is always the big question from academics. You know, who's going to actually be the PI? We need somebody that can be, you got to prove that you have a lab space, you've got a company, you have a PI that's a viable member of the team without compromising or going through a whole bunch of hoops on the academic side. You can do a lot of pre-submission sleuthing like we sometimes do for academic grants. You can go on the sbir.gov website and search for all the awards that are right now on potentially your topic. It's kind of like an advanced patent search in a way, but it's good to know what's out there and what kind of competition companies you might have for your technology. Same thing with the NIH Reporter website. I'm sure many of you have used this just to look at, you know, what's funded in a certain field, but you can drill down to R41s, which are SBIR, STTR, R43s, and find your topic of interest in those type of grants. And I'm lucky I took out all my customer discovery slides because we've already talked about that, and I'm not the expert, but I did go through the I-Core program with this SBIR phase 1, the NIH version of this, and it was demanding, but you learn a lot because you really realize that most of us don't know who our customers actually are when we start. We're just thinking, oh, it's the patient. But actually, there's like a whole layer, you know, right? In pharmaceutics and healthcare, I mean, there's a lot more than before the patient. So you have to learn what the pain points are and what the problems are of these companies and investors that might actually want to help you. That's all I'll say about that, because that's kind of but it is good to do that as early as possible, because now, for instance, I did the I-Core during my SBIR phase 1. It would have been more helpful to do it before we applied, because then we know how to, you know, structure our grant and the rationale. So I would highly suggest looking into the NSF I-Core if you're interested in that. It would help you, I'm sure it would help you be able to write a very strong, compelling proposal around your technology. And there's a whole bunch of other you know, resources, sbir.gov. You can all find it, I'm sure, and there's tons of different resources and lots of really interesting now, you know, in the days since COVID, there's webinars every day, I think, on some small business related technology commercialization aspect that can be very helpful. So in the last few minutes, I've got about 10, I guess. I'd like to just switch because, as I mentioned, you know, the win-win thing of small business technology transfer and funding is it helps you as an investigator, as a researcher. It potentially helps patients down the road. It helps small business and local economy. It also fulfills the university mission of serving its community, right? But there's been this big divide between the academic purity and the business world that you know, it persists at various levels in any institution you go to. But I think that luckily for us, in the last 5 years, there was a consortium established under some NSF funding called the PTIE, Promotion and Tenure, Innovation and Entrepreneurship Coalition. And they actually published, so if you're interested in this, the best thing to do is read this paper in Science. It just came out in 2021, I believe it is. They basically 65 institutions, some tech transfer type of agencies, as well as mostly universities, got together and had several meetings and identified a whole bunch of problems and pain points that they're having with their faculty trying to make this jump when they have potentially an earth-shattering, you know, invention and idea, jumping away from true academics into the commercialization realm. And so this has been a really helpful tool for us, because we realize that faculty are not going to take the chance, especially when they're on tenure track, to all of a sudden divert and change your position for a couple of years, maybe 5 years, to try to get your invention to work, and then come back and find out that it's not valued at the P&T level. So this group has done a really great thing and service for, I think, all of us, especially institutions like ours and others who are looking to improve ourselves and find a way to incorporate these things as value points into the academic process. So they basically, they sought to expand university P&T guidelines so they could inclusively, involve innovation and entrepreneurship, and the impact of that, and make it a value structure in their documents for all their colleges. The nice thing is the faculty, in all situations, most faculty and students say this is a good thing. It's just a matter of getting it into the old language that we haven't done a very good job of, apparently. And I said it was 65 institutions all over the place. They have a commitment to diversity. I think just a commitment to having institutions from all over the place, not just Stanford, MD Anderson, and Harvard, or whatever it is. They're from all over the place, all different demographics. And that serves us well, I think, because what really comes through is, doesn't matter what level the university is at, they all have had similar issues, except for maybe the very top, like Harvard, where I think as an undergrad, you're supposed to take an entrepreneurial class, right? They promote that, while the rest of us, I think, have been lagging behind, thinking, oh, we shouldn't combine music, industry, and science, and research. So that's a nice thing to see. And I won't go through all this, but they've defined, very well, in a very modern, up-to-date way, what they mean by entrepreneurship and innovation, and why it shouldn't be a bad word to commercialize something out of a university-based IP effort. And then the major thing is to then use all of this consensus to suggest ways for universities such as ours to correct the misalignment that exists between kind of the university mission statement. I don't know if any of you know what the UAMS mission statement is, but it isn't to publish papers and get R01 grants in my academic lab. I mean, it's to serve the community and, expand our knowledge to help people, basically. So it's an interesting thing. But the power of this is that using these new recommendations, you can use the university mission statement as kind of the base point to expand these ideas, and nobody has a problem with that. So it's really a good thing. And they did a huge 377 institution survey. And again, most of the trends were very similar, no matter where the institution was and where it was located, and what its structure was, and how hard it was to get into or not. It was all similar problems, because this classic academic stigma and business stigma existed. There's really, if you read the reports, there's a lot of benefits to faculty to get engaged in this, right? And I think Sarah mentioned, or there was these studies showing that labs and departments that are more entrepreneurial are actually as productive or more productive than many of the labs that become completely academic. So there's a lot to be said just for that and those type of studies. And papers published by university industry collaborations are cited more than multi or single university papers. So there you go. There's another reason you can add it to your P&T narrative. And of course, I think students as well, like we've already mentioned, but the high amount of PhDs that are now going into industry and other careers, it behooves us to have programs that align with these interests and teach these students these types of things, so they can be more effective no matter where they end up at the end of their training. So with all that, and I'll leave, I didn't want to read all this text, but I just want you to know it's out there here. The PTIE has a website as well. So then they have a lot of really nice recommendations and summaries there that you can look through if you're interested. Take home again is, hi, we're here. I'm here, I'm new, but I'm very interested in helping anybody who's interested in starting to take the first or many steps down these paths to a commercialization of a great idea. The team at BioVentures will help you. We will do that. And it's been really exciting to be a part of this growing ecosystem. And not only at BioVentures, but statewide. We've really started to make some new connections, I think, that really just weren't active before. ASB TDC, just again, they have a lot of resources. They're just one example. I wanted to highlight the Science Venture Studios, SVS, which is a Walton Family Foundation supported organization. And they will accept your plea for help on developing SBIR award proposals If you give them a pitch and, you talk about it, and Rejuvenex actually just put a phase 1 SBIR into the NSF using their services, and they've been outstanding, and they're free of charge. So it's like, what the heck? Like Eric said, wow, it's a lot nicer having somebody help you write a grant than sitting up till midnight every night and trying to write out R01 specific aims. And then there's a UAMS Therapeutics Accelerator potentially coming soon that John Immig is really pushing as the new chair of pharmaceutical sciences. So that will be a helpful engagement as well. As I said, contact me. I think that if the more we talk and the more we all know who each other are, this day is just the start of many, hopefully different formats and connection points for us. But yeah, dropping the ball, this is my biggest takeaway. Dropping the ball is the greatest enemy to anything, right? And I think in commercialization, it's easy to drop the ball. Like you throw your disclosure in and then you just say, well, where's the money? I'm waiting for my patent to be, but there's so many things that need to be handheld along there that hopefully we can help you do that. We're trying to stop the drop. And just on the other side note of the PTIE stuff, I am currently working with College of Medicine, College of Nursing, and College of Pharmacy on revising their P&T documents. So there's going to be language there soon that can be used as a reason to pursue these activities even more so. There's the picture again of all the people that I get to sometimes work with. And this guy, which I didn't have a picture of, named Kevin, but very many thanks to Kevin. I mean, he's a man of many hats, man of my hairstyle, love it. But he's also very patient with all of us because we got a lot of stuff going. And so we're all trying to do the best we can. I guess I'll say that we all keep saying we're building the airplane as we're flying it. So hop on board. And last thing, yes, my email is here. Please do contact me with any questions related to any of this at any time. The even better thing is we're having an on-campus NIH SBIR workshop in June. So I don't know if any of you have seen this yet or not. If you haven't, please go to this and learn from these program officers that are going to be here. And also Alex Beeris, one of the people highlighted in that in the little video I showed you, is going to be there just talking about their experience with New Shores. So I think that's a great follow-up to today in the near future. So with that, I'll stop and we can chat about questions. Thank you.